Daniel's breath hitched in his throat, a strangled sob fighting its way free. The ornate chandelier above, usually a symbol of the only life had ever known, seemed to mock him with its cold, glittering perfection. He clutched the worn duffel bag tighter, the coarse canvas a stark contrast to the silk pajamas he still wore. Silk pajamas that, just hours ago, had felt like a comfortable second skin. Now, they felt like a gilded cage. The argument was still echoing in his ears, a cacophony of his mother's desperate pleas and his own incredulous outrage. He hadn't believed it at first. Had thought it was some bizarre, cruel joke. But the cold, hard glint in his mother's eyes, the way she had laid out the details with a chillingly pragmatic tone, had shattered that illusion. She was serious. She was actually considering selling him. Not in the literal, chattel-slave sense, of course. But the euphemisms didn't soften the blow. Arranging a favorable marriage, Shed called it. Securing your future. Providing you with opportunities. Opportunities to be a glorified ornament on the arm of some wealthy, older woman. A woman he didn't know, didn't love, and likely wouldn't even like. A woman who saw him as a possession, a trophy to be displayed, a void to be filled with a younger, attractive companion. His mother, Isabella, was a creature of refined tastes and dwindling resources. The family fortune, once considerable, had been eroded by a series of bad investments and a penchant for extravagant living. The sprawling estate, the designer clothes, the lavish parties, all were teetering on the brink of collapse. Daniel knew, intellectually, that his mother was under immense pressure. Had seen the worry lines etched deeper into her face, the increasing frequency of her hushed phone calls, the way she had flinched whenever a bill arrived. But understanding the reasons behind her actions didn't make them any less horrifying. He was her son. Her only son. How could she even contemplate sacrificing his happiness, his autonomy, his very soul, for the sake of preserving their lavish lifestyle? How could she look at him, her own flesh and blood, and see a commodity to be bartered? The weight of the betrayal was crushing. It wasn't just the potential marriage itself, it was the underlying message it conveyed, that he was expendable, that his feelings didn't matter, that his worth was measured solely by his ability to alleviate her financial woes. Had tried to reason with her, to plead with her, to make her understand the depth of his revulsion. Had argued that there were other options, that they could downsize, that he could get a job, that they could find a way to weather the storm together. But she dismissed his suggestions with a wave of her hand, her eyes filled with a mixture of desperation and a chilling resolve. You don't understand, Daniel, Shed said, her voice tight with controlled hysteria. This is the only way. It's for your own good. My own good? He retorted, his voice cracking with anger and disbelief. How can being trapped in a loveless marriage be for my own good? How can selling myself to the highest bidder be for my own good? The argument had escalated, fueled by years of unspoken resentments and a fundamental clash of values. He accused her of being selfish, of being shallow, of valuing money over her own son. She accused him of being naive, of being ungrateful, of failing to appreciate the sacrifices she'd made for him. Finally, he'd reached his breaking point. He couldn't stay there, not even for another minute. The air in the house felt thick with deceit and despair, suffocating him with its opulence and its lies. He needed to escape, to breathe, to find a place where he could be himself, where he could make his own choices, where he could define his own destiny. So, had packed a bag with a few essentials, some clothes, a small amount of cash had saved from his allowance, his phone, and a worn copy of his favorite book, The Catcher in the Rye. He knew it was a cliché, a runaway's Bible, but the protagonist's angst and alienation resonated with him in a way that nothing else ever had. He crept down the grand staircase, his footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. The house was silent, save for the distant hum of the security system. He reached the front door, his hand trembling as he deactivated the alarm. He hesitated for a moment, a wave of conflicting emotions washing over him. Part of him wanted to turn back, to beg his mother to reconsider, to cling to the familiar comfort of his privileged life. But the other part, the part that had been awakened by her betrayal, knew that he couldn't. He had to leave. He had to save himself. He slipped out into the night, the cool air stinging his lungs. He didn't know where he was going, what he would do, or how he would survive. All he knew was that he couldn't stay. The city stretched before him, a labyrinth of glittering lights and shadowy alleyways. He started walking, his feet carrying him away from the only home he'd ever known, towards an uncertain future. He had a vague idea of reaching his Aunt Carol in New York. She was his mother's sister, but unlike Isabella, Carol had always been supportive and understanding of Daniel. She was an artist, a free spirit who had never conformed to societal expectations. He remembered her visits fondly, filled with laughter, art supplies, and conversations about life beyond the gilded cage. But New York was hundreds of miles away. He checked his wallet again. Just under $300. Enough for a bus ticket, maybe, but that would leave him with nothing. He considered calling Carol, but he hesitated. He didn't want to worry her, and he wasn't even sure if she had room for him. He needed to figure this out on his own, at least for a little while. He found himself wandering towards the less affluent part of town, an area he'd only ever seen from the tinted windows of his family's car. The streets were narrower, the buildings were older, and the air was thick with the smell of exhaust and cheap food. He felt a strange sense of liberation here, a feeling of being anonymous, of being invisible. No one knew who he was, no one cared about his family's wealth or his mother's expectations. He was just another face in the crowd, a nameless figure adrift in the urban landscape. He ducked into a dimly lit diner, the only place open at this hour. The formica tables were sticky, the air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and frying grease, and the clientele consisted mostly of truckers, insomniacs, and other denizens of the night. He ordered a coffee and a grilled cheese sandwich, savoring the simple flavors. It was the first time in a long time that he'd felt truly hungry, truly present in his own body. As he ate, he overheard snippets of conversation from the other patrons. Stories of hardship, of resilience, of everyday struggles. He realized that his own problems, while significant to him, were not unique. Everyone had their own burdens to bear, their own battles to fight. He spent the rest of the night wandering the streets, observing the city with new eyes. He saw the homeless huddled in doorways, the prostitutes soliciting customers, the drug dealers peddling their wares. He saw the darkness and the despair that lurked beneath the surface of the glittering metropolis. But he also saw the resilience, the creativity, and the compassion that thrived in the face of adversity. He saw street artists creating vibrant murals on crumbling walls, musicians busking for spare change, volunteers serving food to the homeless. He realized that the world was a much more complex and multifaceted place than he had ever imagined. His privileged upbringing had shielded him from the harsh realities of life, but it had also blinded him to the beauty and the humanity that existed in the margins. As the sun began to rise, casting a pale glow over the city, he found himself in a small park. He sat down on a bench, exhausted but strangely exhilarated. He watched as the city began to awaken, as people started their daily routines. He wondered what his own routine would be, now that he was on his own. He knew that he couldn't keep wandering the streets indefinitely. He needed to find a place to stay, a way to earn money, a plan for his future. He pulled out his phone and started searching for hostels and cheap hotels. He also looked for job postings, anything that didn't require experience or a formal education. The options were limited, but he managed to find a hostel that offered dormitory-style accommodations for a reasonable price. He booked a bed for a few nights, hoping that it would give him enough time to figure things out. He also found a few job postings for dishwashers and busboys at local restaurants. He knew it wouldn't be glamorous, but it would be a start. He applied for the jobs, hoping that someone would give him a chance. He spent the next few days navigating the unfamiliar world of budget accommodation and minimum wage jobs. The hostel was a melting pot of travelers from all over the world, each with their own story to tell. He met backpackers, students, artists, and refugees, all searching for something, all trying to make their way in the world. He learned to cook simple meals in the communal kitchen, to share the limited resources with his fellow travelers, to navigate the chaos and the camaraderie of hostel life. He also learned to be more resourceful, more resilient, and more independent. He got a job as a dishwasher at a small Italian restaurant. The work was hard, the hours were long, and the pay was meager. But he didn't mind. He was grateful for the opportunity to earn his own money, to contribute to something, to feel like he was making a difference. He worked alongside a diverse crew of cooks, waiters, and other dishwashers. He learned about their lives, their struggles, and their dreams. He learned about the challenges faced by immigrants, by single parents, by people struggling with addiction. He realized that he had a lot to learn, and that he had a lot to be grateful for. He started to see the world in a new light. He saw the beauty in the mundane, the humanity in the marginalized, the hope in the face of despair. He started to appreciate the simple things in life, a warm meal, a comfortable bed, a friendly face. He also started to confront his own demons. He realized that he had been living in a bubble, shielded from the realities of the world. He had been entitled, privileged, and naive. He had taken his comfortable life for granted, and he had failed to appreciate the sacrifices that his mother had made for him. He started to understand her desperation, her fear, and her misguided attempts to secure his future. He didn't forgive her for what she had done, but he started to see her as a flawed human being, rather than a monster. He realized that he needed to forgive her, not for her sake, but for his own. He couldn't move forward until he released the anger and the resentment that had been festering inside him. He decided to write her a letter. He poured out his heart, expressing his pain, his disappointment, and his newfound understanding. He didn't blame her, he didn't judge her, he simply told her how he felt. He didn't expect her to respond, but he felt a sense of relief after he mailed the letter. It was a weight off his shoulders, a step towards healing. He continued to work at the restaurant, saving every penny he could. He started taking art classes at a local community center, exploring his own creativity and finding a new outlet for his emotions. He made new friends, people who accepted him for who he was, not for who his mother wanted him to be. He started to build a new life for himself, a life that was based on his own values, his own dreams, and his own choices. He was no longer running away from something, he was running towards something. He was running towards himself. Months passed. He received a letter from his Aunt Carol. She had heard about what happened from a mutual acquaintance and was worried sick. She enclosed a plane ticket to New York and urged him to come stay with her. Daniel hesitated. He was building a life here, a hard-won life of his own making. He wasn't sure he wanted to leave. He wrote back to Carol, thanking her for her generosity but explaining that he needed more time to think. He knew that New York offered opportunities he couldn't find here, but he also knew that leaving would mean abandoning the community he had built, the friends he had made, and the hard-earned sense of independence he had discovered. He spent weeks agonizing over the decision. He talked to his friends, his coworkers, and his art teacher. Everyone had different advice, but ultimately, the decision was his. One evening, after a particularly long and grueling shift at the restaurant, he sat down on a park bench and watched the sunset. The sky was ablaze with color, a vibrant tapestry of orange, pink, and purple. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the cool evening air on his skin. He realized that he couldn't stay here forever. He needed to grow, to learn, to explore his potential. He needed to take a leap of faith, even if it meant leaving behind the familiar comforts of his new life. He decided to go to New York. He wrote to Carol, accepting her offer. He quit his job at the restaurant, said goodbye to his friends, and packed his belongings. He felt a pang of sadness as he boarded the bus to the airport, but he also felt a sense of excitement and anticipation. He knew that New York would be a different kind of challenge, a different kind of adventure. But he was ready. He was no longer the naive, privileged boy who had run away from home. He was a survivor, a fighter, and an artist. He was Daniel, and he was ready to face whatever the future held. He arrived in New York and was greeted by Carol with a warm hug. Her apartment was small but cozy, filled with paintings, sculptures, and other artistic creations. He immediately felt at home. Carol helped him find a job at a local art supply store. He loved being surrounded by paints, brushes, and canvases. He spent his free time exploring the city, visiting museums, and sketching in Central Park. He enrolled in a night class at a local art school, honing his skills and developing his own unique style. He met other artists, learned from their experiences, and found inspiration in their work. He started to exhibit his paintings at local galleries. His work was well received, and he began to gain recognition as a talented young artist. One day, he received a letter from his mother. She apologized for her actions and asked for his forgiveness. She explained that she had been under immense pressure, but that she realized she had made a terrible mistake. Daniel hesitated. He wasn't sure if he was ready to forgive her. He had come so far on his own, and he didn't want to be drawn back into the drama of his old life. He decided to meet her. They met at a neutral location, a small cafe in the city. The meeting was awkward at first, but gradually, they began to talk. His mother explained her struggles, her fears, and her regrets. He listened, trying to understand her perspective. He realized that she had changed. She was no longer the shallow, materialistic woman he had remembered. She had learned from her mistakes, and she was genuinely sorry for the pain she had caused him. He forgave her. It wasn't easy, but he knew that it was the right thing to do. He couldn't hold on to the anger and the resentment forever. He needed to move on, to heal, and to build a new relationship with his mother. They started to see each other regularly. They talked about their lives, their dreams, and their fears. They slowly rebuilt their relationship, brick by brick. Daniel eventually became a successful artist, exhibiting his work in galleries all over the world. He never forgot his roots, and he never forgot the lessons he had learned from his time on the streets. He used his art to tell stories, to raise awareness about social issues, and to inspire others to follow their dreams. He became an advocate for the homeless, for the marginalized, and for the forgotten. He never forgot the kindness of strangers, the support of his friends, and the love of his Aunt Carol. He knew that he wouldn't be where he was today without them. And he never forgot the pain and the betrayal that had led him to run away from home. It was a difficult chapter in his life, but it was also a defining one. It had taught him the importance of independence, resilience, and self-reliance. It had taught him the value of human connection, the power of forgiveness, and the beauty of the human spirit. Daniel's journey was far from over, but he was finally on the right path. He was no longer running away from anything. He was running towards his dreams, his purpose, and his own authentic self. He was Daniel, the artist, the survivor, and the son. And he was finally free. He often thought about the night he ran away. He wouldn't wish that experience on anyone, but he also wouldn't trade it for anything. It had made him who he was. It had shown him the world, in all its beauty and its ugliness. It had taught him the true meaning of life. And as he stood in his studio, surrounded by his art, he smiled. He was home. He was finally home.